Hello, everyone. Just a quick disclaimer. I have two children in the background, so it will be kind of noisy at some point, time to time. But thank you for your patience. Um, Today, I'm going to be comparing wired and wireless networks. This is instructed by the GCU instructor of ITT-370 course. It's just an assignment. Today I'll be talking about the difference between wired and wireless networks. Wired networks refers to the physical state, relies more on the cabling and its connection. The cabling consists of like copper wire, fiber optic, twisted pair cables, and with these cables, you make the connections from end-to-end devices such as routers, servers, desktops, and the internet itself. The wireless networks they still consist of physical cables, but they do not rely as much as the wired ones. Instead, they rely more on the electromagnetic waves or the radio frequencies that make up the connection. So Wi-Fi routers. Obviously, it's gonna need its power supply cord, but that is it. You don't need to run an Ethernet cable all the way through. These type of connections can be conducted by using antennas, satellites as such, which every company uses nowadays, mainly. Moving on to the OSI model, we'll be talking about the physical layer and the data link layer. Knowing the difference, if physical layer relies more on the electrical cables and the systems itself, while the data link layer focuses on the data error correction or data transmission of the physical layer. So it goes one top of the other. The physical layer focuses on identifying cable types, radio frequencies, and its devices itself. It's basically the essential foundation when creating a network infrastructure. I mean, you have to have devices, end-to-end devices such as desktops, printers, phones. You need it, basically. Routers, switches. Cable, same thing. It relies more on the power supply, the Ethernet cable. It's just the basic thing that one needs to create in order to create a network infrastructure for an organization. For the data link layer, it's just above the physical layer, it just moves up. And that one relies more on that data transmission, from what I understand. And it has two subcategories, which is the media access control layer and the logical link control layer. From what I understand, like I said, this is new information, but from what I understand, the media access control layer, it focuses more on the error correction, and it reframes data in order to transmit, to push forward to transmit to the receiver. The logical link control layer, that focuses more on the flow control of the data, going through, and the multiplexing and the synchronization of the data packets. So it just basically, it covers mainly everything, the whole concept of data transmission. Moving on, we are going to talk about the security risks that goes along with wired networks and wireless networks. The wired networks brings the risk of unprivileged access and the network devices itself. So for the unprivileged access, if the room is not secured, then it does bring risk of somebody coming in unintentionally or intentionally and disconnect any cabling from any devices that they please. They can disconnect the Ethernet port cabling. I remember at work, we would have the same issue. We would set up a bunch of laptops connected to the cable and everything, set them up for any user that wants to check their emails, it's nothing too much of there's no much access to it. There's just checking emails or doing any courses online. And there will be people that disconnect the Ethernet cable a bunch of times, and they will leave it unconnected for so long, then the computer will fall out of the domain, and it's just a hassle for somebody to reconnect it again or add on to it again, and it it's just really unprivileged access at this point. And moving on to the unprotected cabling, same thing. If it's not protected, or if it's not securely, or if it's not moved out of sight that nobody can actually reach to it, then there will be risk of people pulling cables or tripping over them if they're not secured. Same thing with laptops. If they're just there, people can get it, grab it, move it somewhere else, and it's not really secured. And there's also social engineering. They can do tailgating if they want to do it inside of a secured room to the physical cabling and everything, which is a risk. Moving on to network devices, this can be done by an insider threat if they see a left laptop somewhere alone, and I wouldn't say alone, but just left there. They would take it and try to cause damage or do anything to threat the organization or company. And then there's also lack of security practices of safekeeping. Same thing, leaving the laptop behind somewhere, or leaving your ID somewhere, or leaving a written password on the laptop in order for you not to forget. However, it's somebody can grab it and cause the damage. Moving on to the wireless networks, the risk that comes with is misconfiguration, rogue access points, war driver, and the denial of service attacks. So misconfiguration, I mean by the administrator leaving the default settings or not changing the privilege access of each employee, because if everyone has access to something really sensitive, then there's a really big risk where somebody can accidentally cause a data leakage, or they download the information, take it home, and then somebody else can grab it and steal it. So it's always best to change the default settings, and that includes passwords, account information, everything. There's also rogue access points. The hacker can trick one to thinking that they're connecting to to a free internet service, but yet they're connected to the hacker, in which the hacker can access the devices. I believe it's called the evil twin. Moving on to the war driver, it is illegal in California, from what I remember. It's basically hackers looking for unsecured networks in a moving vehicle. So they're intentionally trying to move around and see who has unsecured network in order to cause the damage and get in. There is also denial of service attacks, and that just basically is denying users to access any resources, services, anything as such, which is pretty a big one, especially in a work organization. Basically really can't do any work if somebody's blocking access. We're moving on to the security and attributes of the wireless networks. It brings accessibility, it brings guest access, growth and expansion, and mobility. What I mean by accessibility, I'm referring to one can achieve accessing files, applications, or any communication platform in order to reach anybody. And this can be taken from working at home or at the workplace. However, you can still move around from office to office, and you can move around laptops, personal devices, tablets, move around while you also work. So it's not really stationary or anything like that, or time restrictive. Moving on to guest access. This is great because you can create two separate wireless networks, one for the organization itself where employees work on it, they're allowed to connect to, and then there's also guests and customers that they connect to the guest one, so they can just do the basics such as receiving Wi-Fi, and that is it. They can't access anything else, or maybe just log into their account, but that is it. They really can't do much. And this is just in order to avoid data leakage and unauthorized access. There is the growth and expansion, which is employing or dismissing individuals. This one allows to add or remove a user without the extra cost of cabling or the extra cost of services of installing these things. It's just simply adding or removing. Of course, there's additional steps to that, but it's just the start. There is mobility, where one can access resources from anywhere and any time. Like I said, this allows one to perform the task without being restricted to one place or restricted on time. You know, if by chance you couldn't finish one task or you were given permission to work at home, you could take it at home and keep working on it so you don't fall behind. You know, keep up with meeting the organization goals. In order to protect wireless networks, there are some common strategies to it, and there's tools. Doing a little bit of research, I've seen that changing default settings, configuring privileged access, enabling encryption, install and update firewalls, install, update antivirus applications, and consistently monitoring and doing audit logs within the network. It's pretty common ones, and basically it avoids the basic attacks towards the wireless networks. Enabling encryption, there is a software tool that I found, which is the Axcrypt. It encrypts file sharing, anonymous file names. It encourages password management, and is compatible across Windows, OS, iOS, and Android. However, it's not compatible with Linux or anything other than that. But I believe it's still a pretty good tool just to start off with, or at least looking at it. And then installing and updating antivirus applications. I've heard of, I believe it's called McAfee. There's also Malwarebytes. There's so many antivirus applications, but personally I've heard that Malwarebytes is pretty easy tool to use, as it allows to do automatic scans. However, it's still a good idea to keep monitoring yourself, you know, not relying on the system too much itself, but just keep checking and monitoring. And for the form of monitoring, there's also Wireshark, where you can monitor any suspicious activity or any data packets that goes through. It's pretty nice. I'm still learning in the Wireshark, however, but I know that it has those features. And that is it, guys. Thank you so much. And again, excuse me for the noise that I had in the background. Thank you for being patient. Bye.